Hi there, and welcome to the daily chapter reading of How to Know God. 7 stages of God. If you don't make yourself equal to God, you can't perceive God. Anonymous Christian heretic, 3rd century. Each person, I forgot the English accent. Each person is entitled to some version of God that seems real, yet many versions contradict one another. On a long trip to India a few years ago, we had stopped the car to look at a family of Himalayan monkeys playing by the side of the road. 30 seconds after we got out, a whole band of monkeys, maybe 100 strong, descended upon us. While everyone was snapping photos and throwing bits of fruit and bread, I noticed not far away an old village woman all by herself, kneeling before a makeshift shrine under a tree. She was praying to Hanuman, a god in the shape of a monkey. I realized then that this pack hung around to grab food from the altar and any handouts they could charm from tourists like us. What is the difference, I thought, between these chattering clever animals who knew all the tricks to catch our attention and a god? Hanuman, who could fly and was known as the son of the wind, once journeyed to these same Himalayas. When Prince Ram's brother lay dying from a grievous wound received in battle, the Flying Monkey King was sent to bring back the one special herb that could save his life. Hanuman looked everywhere but couldn't find the herb, so in frustration he ripped up the whole mountain where the plant grew and sped it back to lay it at Rama's feet. The old woman kneeling at the rickety shrine certainly knew this story from childhood. But why would she worship a monkey, even a mythic flying one, and even a king? Her face was as devout as anyone praying to the Queen of Heaven or the Son of God. Was her prayer going astray because of whom she prayed to? Was it going anywhere at all? We are now ready to answer the simplest but most profound question. Who is God? He cannot just be impersonal, a principle or a level of reality or a field. We went into the quantum and virtual domains to establish a basis for the sacred, yet that was only the beginning. In all religious, God is described as infinite and unbounded, which creates a huge problem. An infinite God is nowhere and everywhere at the same time. He transcends nature, and therefore you cannot find him. As we said at the outset, one must assume that God leaves no fingerprints in the material world. This gives us no choice but to find a substitute for infinity that retains something of God enough so that we feel his presence. The book of Genesis declares that God created Adam in his own image, but we have been returning the favor almost since the beginning, fashioning God in our image over and over again. In India, these images include almost every creature, event, or phenomenon. Lightning can be worshipped as coming from the god Indra. A rupee coin is a symbol of Lakshmi, goddess of prosperity. The taxicabs of Delhi and Bombay may be protected by plastic figures of Ganesh, a cheerfully smiling elephant with a pot belly dangling from the rear view mirror. In all these cases, however, there is an understanding that only one thing is really being worshipped, the self. The same I that gives a person a sense of identity extending beyond the physical body, expanding to embrace nature, the universe, and ultimately pure spirit. In the West, it would be exotic to worship a monkey god, but scandalous to worship the self. The anecdote is told of an English anthropologist researching into the beliefs of Hinduism. One day, he goes creeping through the forest and spies an old man dancing in a grove of trees. In ecstasy, the old man embraces their trunks and says, "Lord, how I love you." Then he falls to the ground and chants, "Blessed are you, O Lord." Jumping to his feet, he raises his arms to the sky and cries, "I am overjoyed to hear your voice and to see your face." Unable to stand the spectacle any longer, the anthropologist jumps out of the bushes. "I must tell you, my good man, that you are quite crazy," he says. "Why is that?" the old man asks in confusion. "Because here you are, all alone in the woods, and you think that you're talking to God," says the anthropologist. "What do you mean, alone?" the man replies. To anyone who worships God as the self, it is obvious that none of us are all alone. The self isn't personal ego, but a pervasive presence that cannot be escaped. I lost my line. Oh, he escaped. The East seems to have no difficulties here, but as you go west, uneasiness mounts. In the 3rd century of the Christian era, an unknown heretic wrote, "If you don't make yourself equal to God, you cannot perceive God." The belief did not succeed as dogma. The hearsay here is, of course, that human and divine are not equal in Christianity, but at other levels it is undeniable. The God of any religion is only a fragment of God. This has to be true because a being who is unbound has no image, no role to play, no location either inside or outside the cosmos, whereas religions offer many images: Father, Mother, Lawgiver, Judge, Ruler of the universe. There are 7 visions of God which can be associated with organized faiths. Each one is a fragment, but so complete as to create a unique world. Stage 1, God the Protector. Stage 2, God the Almighty. Stage 3, God of Peace. Stage 4, God the Redeemer. Stage 5, God the Creator. Stage 6, God of Miracles. Stage 7, God of Pure Being, I Am. Each stage meets a particular human need, which is only natural. In the face of nature's overwhelming forces, humans need a God who would protect them from harm. When they felt that they had broken the law or committed wrongdoing, people turned to a God who would judge them on the one hand and redeem their sins on the other. In this way, purely from self-interest, the project of creating God in our own image proceeded and continues to proceed. Several of these stages, such as Redeemer and Creator, sound familiar from the Bible, and now that Buddhism has become more popular in the West, the final stage, where God is experienced as eternal silence and pure beings, is not as foreign as it once would have been. But we are not comparing religion here. No stage is absolute on its own to claim to truth. Each one implies a different relationship, however. If you see yourself as one of God's children, then his relationship to you will be as a protector or a maker of rules. This relationship shifts if you see yourself as a creator. Then you start to share some of God's functions. You stand on more equal ground until finally, at the stage of I Am, the same pure being is common to both God and humans. In the progress from stage 1 to stage 7, the wide gap between God and his worshippers becomes narrower and eventually closes. Therefore, we can say that we keep creating God in our image for a reason that is more than vanity. We want to bring him home to us to achieve intimacy. Yet whether you see God as an almighty judge who punishes or as a benign source of inner peace, he isn't exclusively that. To an atheist, all forms of deity are a false projection, pure and simple. We attribute human traits to God, such as mercy and love, set these traits upon an altar, and then proceed to pray to them. Every image of God, then, including the most abstract ones, is completely empty. By abstract, I mean the God of Islam and Orthodox Judaism, neither of which is allowed to be portrayed with a human face. According to the atheist, religion is the ultimate illusion since we are only worshipping ourselves secondhand. There are 2 ways to respond to this accusation. The first is the argument that an infinite God should be worshipped in all ways. The second is the argument that God has to be approached in stages, for otherwise one could never close the huge gap between him and us. I think the second argument is more the telling one. Unless we can see ourselves in the mirror, we will never see God there. Consider the list again, and you will see how God shifts in response to very human situations. God is a protector to those who see themselves in danger. God is almighty to those who want power or lack any way of getting power. God brings peace to those who have discovered their own inner world. God redeems those who are conscious of committing a sin. God is the creator when we wonder where the world came from. God is behind miracles when the laws of nature are suddenly revoked without warning. God is existence itself, I am, to those who feel ecstasy and a sense of pure being. In our search for the one and only God, we pursue the impossible. The issue isn't how many gods exist, but how completely our own needs can be spiritually fulfilled. When someone asks, "Is there really a God?" The most legitimate answer is, who's asking? The perceiver is intimately linked to his perceptions. The fact that we single out traits like mercy and love, judgment and rejection, shows that we force to give God human attributes. But this is absolutely proper if those traits came from God in the first place. In other words, a circle connects the human and the divine. From the virtual level, which is our source, the qualities of spirit flow until they reach us in the material world. We experience this flow as our own inner impulses, and this is also appropriate because for every stage of God here exists a specific biological response. The brain is an instrument of the mind, but it is a very convincing one. All that we really know about the brain is that it creates our perception, our thinking, and our motor activity. But these are powerful things. On the material plane, the brain is our only way of registering reality, and spirit must be filtered through biology. No one uses the entire brain at once. We select from a range of built-in mechanisms. There are 7 of these, as we saw, that directly relate to spiritual experience. 1, a fight-or-flight response. 2, reactive response. 3, restful awareness response. 4, intuitive response. 5, creative response. 6, visionary response. 7, sacred response. In the opening chapter, I gave a thumbnail description of each, but even in abbreviated form, you may have begun to see how much of your own spiritual life is based on habitual or even unconscious reflect. Fight or flight is a primitive, atavistic response to protect yourself inherited from animals. It energizes the body to meet outside danger and threat. This is the reflex that sends a mother into a burning house to save her child. The reactive response makes us defend our ego and its needs. When we compete and seek to rise above others, we automatically look out for me as opposed to the other. This is the reflex that fuels the stock market, political parties, and religious conflict. Restful awareness is the first step away from outside forces. This response brings inner calm in the face of chaos or threats. We turn to it in prayer and meditation. The intuitive response calls upon the inner world for more than peace and calm. We ask inside for answers and solutions. This state is associated with synchronicity, flashes of insight, and religious awakening. The creative response breaks free from old patterns. It gives up the known to explore the unknown. Creativity is synonymous with the flow of inspiration. The visionary response embraces a universal me in place of the isolated ego. It looks beyond all boundaries and is not fixed by the laws of nature that limit earlier stages.